one of the things that I always tell people when they question sort of art as an asset class is it's important to remember this is one of the oldest asset classes there are.
Right.
So Sotheby's, up until going private recently, was the oldest company on the New York Stock Exchange at 275 years old. So art literally has been traded publicly at auction for centuries, which in itself is hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I understand can give it value. So I was working out today, and during my entire workout, I was trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to ask you when I finally got a chance to talk to you. And I was exploring the question in my mind of where the value comes from. I mean, the history, I think, certainly is one of its biggest advantages, right? This idea that it has had a value, and it's had a value as an asset class for such a long time. When I think about things like gold, which has thousands of years of value as an economic instrument because, people have decided it's a store of value, and because it can be used for production as well, I understand that. When I think about art, really, the only thing that I can think of is its, the history and the antiquity behind it that really help assign it value. I mean, is it correct to look at it? Is it correct to look at a piece of art from, say, 1700 and Scott, kind of look at it almost as like an antique, or am I looking at it the wrong way?
Yeah, it's a complicated question. So I guess I would think about a couple of different things. Obviously, there's very simple supply and demand dynamics in the art market, just like any other market. Desirable objects have higher prices, just like a more desirable gemstone would have a higher price because it's larger or something like that. So those simple dynamics apply to art just like any other asset class. We've actually taken a more specific project around what drives art prices and studied that with our research team over the past couple of years, and we think there's two primary things that drive art prices over time. One you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, which is supply. And one of the really, really fascinating things about the asset class, which I think is unique to it, I don't think there's really any other examples like this, is that with an artist makes so many paintings during their life, they pass away, and then those paintings ultimately are donated by collectors to museums or other institutions. So you always have a declining supply of art available for great artists. And that's why when you look at artists like Jackson Pollock, who did these drip paintings, really important paintings in American history, there's only 22 drip paintings left in private collections, but the paintings that are left are not that great. They're sort of BC paintings, but they still sell for $30 million just because there's no other examples. So that's one obvious thing that drives our prices up over time. The second thing, which is a little bit more of a hypothesis, but I think we are getting more and more data to support this, is that art prices are correlated to global ultra wealth creation. So as the wealthy get wealthier, art prices tend to rise over time.
Right.
So if you believe that inequality, for lack of a better word, is growing into the future, then you can see a world where art prices continue to increase.
And that is why this idea of speaking to you today intrigued me, because the articles that I've been reading, I would say over the last 2 years or 3 years, basically say that as the inequality gap has widened and as the global central banking mechanism continues to do what it does, that this asset class is this place for the ultra wealthy, like you said, to kind of duck into. And I mean, some of the returns on some of these pieces of art, you almost have to think to yourself, like, what is going on here? Like, is this money laundering? Like, a guy buys something for $49 million in 2005 and then turns around and sells it for $500 million, 10 years later. And you think, like, oh my God, first off, who has the money to do such a thing? And second off, like, what does this super illiquid, difficult to gauge market look like? And what is that predicated on? Like, where does that bid come from?